So I've come for a bit of a drive down to the south coast of New South Wales, and I'm down at a little town called Bermagui, or just north of Bermagui at the moment, and I've come down to an area I've not shot before, but I've heard a lot about, and I've seen a lot of images of this rock formation online. The place I'm at is called Camel Rock. This whole area, including Camel Rock along the coast here for probably about 5 kilometres, consists of some really impressive granite sea stacks, and these sea stacks are quite large. I mean, Camel Rock itself, I'd say it's probably about 20 metres high, and you get some quite powerful surf hitting that and exploding over the side of those sea stacks. So after a bit of scouting around, I've finally found a composition that I was happy with, and I'm perched up on a cliff face above Camel Rock, and I'm shooting that with Camel Rock as the central focus point in the image. The scene has lent itself to shooting a portrait orientation, and what I've attempted to do this morning is frame Camel Rock as the centre, and then use some of the seagrass that's hanging off some of the rocks up here to add some visual interest to the bottom third of the image. As well as the seagrass in the foreground of the image, just past that, the waves are breaking over the rocks down below me, and so I'm trying to slow down the shutter speed a little bit and get some movement in those waves as they come in, and trying to time it so that I'm not getting too much white water down there, but just enough to cascade over the rocks and act as a bit of a leading line into the foreground of the image. The camera setup this morning has been reasonably straightforward for landscape photography. I've been shooting an f-stop of anywhere between f8 and f16. I've also employed the use of graduated neutral density filter just to tone down some of the highlights in the sky. I've used this because in the foreground, the rocks and the waves that are breaking over those rocks they're in the shadow of a rather large rock formation which is off to the left of me as I shoot. And using the graduated neutral density filter allows me to balance out the high contrast in the image. Now, because the composition I've chosen this morning has elements that are quite close to the camera or quite close to the lens in the bottom of the frame, and also Camel Rock, which is probably about 30 to 50 metres offshore, I'm going to have to use the technique called focus stacking. And that's where I'll take a series of images and focus gradually deeper and deeper into the image. So the first shot I'll focus on the seagrass in the foreground, then I'll probably take another shot where I'm focused halfway out into the bay and the rocks in the bay, and then take a third shot where I'll focus on Camel Rock itself. Once all these shots are completed and I'll get them back into post-production, I'll blend all these images together and ensure that I get critical sharpness throughout the image. I've been fairly fortunate in that I've had this location to myself this morning. I can imagine if the light was really interesting, or probably in the spring, summer months, a lot of photographers would be down here clambering over the rocks. It's quite an iconic location. I've seen a lot of photographs of Camel Rock on social media. But as I said, this is my first time here, and I'm quite impressed with the sea stack structures around here, and I'll probably go for a bit of a walk now and explore the area and see if I can pick out a few more compositions up and down the coast. So I've been walking around Camel Rock and around the headland here a little bit. There is so much to shoot, so many compositions. It's actually quite a stunning location. The sun's fairly high in the sky now, so I'm getting quite a lot of contrast in the rocks around the area. But I've come across a little composition where I'm using some leading lines in the sand, and these leading lines are formed by when the water runs in and out from the ocean. I'm hoping to use those as the focal point in the foreground of the image and then have Camel Rock sort of looming over the scene, I guess, in the background. Anyway, I'll set up the camera and take a few shots and put those up on screen a bit later for you to have a look at. So I've just shot the final composition that I'll shoot at this location today. It was a fairly straight up one, just using the rocks, which have this beautiful orange lichen on them, as a foreground leading into the spire of Camel Rock. I've packed up the gear. The sun's quite high in the sky. I'll make my way back along the beach. Potentially there might be another composition on the way back. There's some smaller rocks that are kind of exposed through the sand, and the waves are washing in around those. I might set up and shoot that for a little bit. Yeah, it's been a really beautiful morning here, and I'm hoping that I've got a few images that I'm reasonably happy with. Anyway, I'll pack up the gear now and make my way back along the beach. It's day 2 here on my trip to Bermagui, and I'm back at Camel Rock. Thought I'd revisit this scene, and there's a bit more cloud cover in the sky this morning, so hopefully that will add an extra dramatic element to the image that was missing yesterday. I'll just set up the camera now, take a few pre-dawn shots, and then talk you through the settings. So the composition I'm shooting this morning isn't, well, it's pretty much exactly the same composition that I shot yesterday. Camera settings are pretty much the same as well. So I'm shooting f13, I'm getting about a 1 second exposure. I've dropped the ISO down to 50 this morning just to slow down the shutter speed a little bit and hopefully get a bit more of the wave action as it breaks across the rocks in the foreground. I've got it set up with a graduated neutral density filter on the front of the camera. This is just again to tone down the highlights in the sky and still maintain some good detail in the shadows in the foreground. I'm now just waiting for sunrise, and it looks like it's going to be pretty good this morning. I should get some nice golden light on the sea stacks and hopefully get a bit of colour in the clouds that are passing over the top of the scene. I've got the camera set on a 2 second timer. This is just to make sure that the camera is nice and still when it actually takes the shot. I may well pull out my cable release and use that to get the shots. This allows me just to time the shot with those waves breaking over the rocks in the foreground a little better. So I've got my camera set up on my Benro tripod, and this is just to obviously give me some stability and so I can repeat a shot at the same settings and the same composition. Once again this morning I've gone with a vertical composition for this little scene, and that's just allowing me to frame up the tussock grass in the foreground leading through the little bay here with the water breaking over the rocks in the foreground, and then on to Camel Rock in the background of the image. Sunrise is probably about, well, I think it's actually happened. There's a bit of a cloud band on the horizon, so I'm not getting that really strong beautiful golden light coming through into the scene. But once the sun comes up, maybe in another 5 or 10 minutes up over the top of those clouds, I should get some really beautiful golden light on the face of Camel Rock. So I came down to Bermagui just for a weekend trip. Part of the reason I came down was to come and visit Camel Rock. I haven't shot here before, and I think I said that in the footage from yesterday. It's always a challenge when you're scrambling around at a new location, particularly here over some of the jagged rocks, and you're scrambling around looking for a composition. The sun's rising and the light's changing quite quickly. So I decided to come back this morning, now that I'm a little more familiar with it, and took the opportunity to come up to a spot where I'd shot the composition yesterday, and I was pretty happy with it. Part of the beauty of landscape photography is the conditions always change every morning, and I've certainly got that here this morning with a nice cloud cover which was missing from yesterday's shot. You can always shoot a scene over and over and over again, and it's always different. I'm really glad that I came back here this morning and got such different light conditions, had the opportunity to reshoot this image. So once again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this little video from Bermagui, and I'll put some images up on screen now for you to have a look. I hope you enjoy. Have a great day. Cheers. How good is this? Even got a seat. I love this kind of landscape photography.